And if you looked at the cars that prospered, and indeed the lap that Max pulled out the bag to take a pretty impressive pole, he really hammered the last sector of his outlap, really getting the tyres in good warm shape so that he could attack the first part of the lap and then just try to hang on in the second part. And we should have done that. And if we had done that, we would have definitely been better placed on the grid.
Hello and welcome back to this Akkodis Race Debrief. My name's Jodie and joining us today we have James Allison to answer your questions from the Japanese Grand Prix. James, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's
nice
good to have you here. Yeah, to offer all your race insights. I know there wasn't so many in Japan, but there were still some really impressive points to take away. So how's the team feeling knowing that we've had that positive reliability and performance?
I think overall positive, but also, well aware that we're not where we want to be yet overall. The McLarens are quicker than us, the Red Bull has a shade on us as well, and we want to close that up. But nearly 3 times as many points after these first 3 races than their equivalents last year, so definitely a step forward, and that's what's leading to the overall positive feeling.
Yeah, super strong start to the season, 3 races in. Let's start now with the first question that's come in. They want to know, why did we pit George so early on in the race?
Well, that was really something that was a consequence of the opening handful of laps. At the beginning of the race, George felt pretty pacey. He was seeing a Ferrari ahead of him, slithering around a bit, making a small error here, a small error there. And although he knew overtaking was going to be fearsomely difficult at this track, he thought by pressurizing the car in front, seeing that he was already a little bit on the edge, he hoped to just trigger an error that was going to be big enough to let him sneak by. A great idea in principle, but the consequence of that, if you don't then make it stick, is that you're running right up behind the other car. That tends to make you run your own tyres hotter. It tends to take life out of your tyres that you then pay for later on in the stint. So at the point where we brought him in, a few laps before the guys in front of us, we were starting to lose contact with the leaders at that point because of the damage done in the opening laps. So it was it was the right thing overall to minimize his overall race time, but obviously we would have preferred it if the tyres were undamaged and we were able to run a strong end of stint pace and extend a little longer.
And you said about the Ferrari being out in front, the Ferrari of Leclerc. Was there a reason why we weren't able to get that overtake done? Was it a pace issue?
I mean, ultimately, yes, everything's a pace issue, but mostly the combination of the tyres, which tend to overheat very demanding corners at that circuit, and the track layout where there isn't actually any very long extended DRS straights. Those 2 things combined meant that you really have to have an enormous pace differential in order to make an overtake stick. Something which you can see played out up and down the field because there were really no overtakes in the race. I think the first 10 cars finished in pretty much the same order they started in, and really this race was won or lost, or your finishing position was determined by what happened on the Saturday.
And now if we take a look at what Kimi's been able to do, another absolute solid performance. He's also got some great results and records under his belt this weekend. So how is he feeling off the back of that, and how impressed with the team?
I think he's feeling pretty chipper. I mean, the fastest lap and the leading the race, youngest guy to do either of those things it's sort of statistically nice, but he'll be well aware that those 2 things are a consequence of the fact that he ran longer than all of the others, and they just flow from that. I think the thing that's more substantive, the thing that will be pumping him up and certainly making all of us delighted with Kimi's development, is that at a very demanding, very technical track, he found his way through qualifying, getting into Q3, qualifying just behind his teammate, and then finding another step forward in the race, able to make that opening stint tyre last longer than anyone else, putting laps in on that tyre at the end of the stint that were absolutely on the pace of the fastest cars that weekend, and then being able to, by the end of the race, be right on George's bumper, showing that he's at the same pace as his really fast and experienced teammate, which for a 18-year-old rookie is no mean achievement. And that's what he will have taken from it, and it's certainly the encouragement we take from it as well.
And obviously they've put in a massive amount of incredible laps, but was it almost predetermined? Was it what we expected as where they qualified was where they were going to end up after the race?
I mean, when we set out the strategy plans, we set out our sort of hopes and dreams as well as our realistic expectation. Our realistic expectation was it was likely to play out the way it did. However, you don't have to sort of assume too many terrible things happening in front for you to dream of maybe being able to jump a couple of people at the stops if they suffered from poor tyre degradation, or if the rain that had been threatened earlier in the weekend had come to pass. So, you know, there were other scenarios where we would have had a more favourable race outcome, but the likely outcome was always going to be the one we saw because of the difficulty of overtaking with these tyres on that track.
Go on, I'm a forever dreamer as well. If there had been rain, what do you think?
When there is rain, then you tend to have results that come as a function of how quick the team is at thinking on its feet, how cool the drivers can stay in those crucial moments of the race, and it's less about the ultimate pace of the car, which we're missing a tenth or two at the moment. So anything's possible in the wet if you can just keep your head and your wits about you.
We've talked about this year's car having that reliability and performance already. How's that comparison to last year's car?
It's quite a different kettle of fish. Last year's car its main problem was it suffered from low speed understeer. That came as a result of an imbalance between the front and the rear tyre temperatures, amongst other things. And it made the car very inconsistent from session to session. So as the track temperature changed or the wind direction changed, we could get it just about dialed in and good if everything stayed just so. But as other things changed around us, we were always chasing after it with the setup, making the car yo-yo in pace quite a lot. This car, we've been to all manner of tracks. We've run in the wet, we've run in the dry, we've run cool, we've run hot, we've run with the wind on our nose, on our tail, and it's pretty well mannered all the time, which has meant that we're able to get the most from it. We're still lacking that last little bit of pace, but at least we got something that we can present to most tracks and know that we're going to have a reasonably tidy weekend, and hopefully as we add developments to it, that tidiness will turn into better end results as well.
So talking of tyres, what issues did George have in qualifying on that last quali session in Q3?
It's been an interesting year at Suzuka. They resurfaced half the track, and in fact the bit that got most of the new asphalt's the opening sector, that very, very fast, challenging turn 1, 2, and then up through the S's. And the main challenge that fresh asphalt gives you is that it's much harder to get the tyres warm and running at a temperature where they grip the fresh asphalt. Then you get onto the older part of the circuit where the asphalt's all rough, and there the tyres will easily overheat. And so a driver is trying to find the right compromise between being able to get round the first part of the circuit and have something that's not overheating at the end of the circuit. In general, they need to sort of hit the last bit of their outlap with quite a lot of vigour in order that the tyre is good in turn 1, 2 and up through the S's on the new asphalt. But you might pay for that a bit later in the lap. And on our final run, and it was definitely not the right thing to do, we urged a slightly cooler start to the lap for George. He sort of felt, no, that's not what I need to do. I need to be hitting it hard. The consequence was the tyre wasn't ready in that first pass of the lap, so we lost a load of time there, which meant it was sort of irrelevant what happened in the second part of the lap. We never got the benefit there either, because the lap was just uncompetitive. And if you looked at the cars that prospered, and indeed the lap that Max pulled out the bag to take a pretty impressive pole, he really hammered the last sector of his outlap, really getting the tyres in good warm shape so that he could attack the first part of the lap and then just try to hang on in the second part. We should have done that. And if we had done that, we would have definitely been better placed on the grid.
So now let's look at our team principal, Toto Wolff. And we knew on the build-up to going to Japan that he wouldn't be there in person. Do we know if he actually watched the race?
Well, we certainly do know that. Like Toto, I was not at this race either. I was back in the UK, but both of us connected to what's going on at the race weekend through all the live intercom system and the telemetry system and the screens. I know full well as I was living through the night in the UK in the Suzuka daytime that Toto was online because we were chatting to one another all the way through the weekend and him to the team. One of the nice things about the connectivity we have is that you don't physically have to be there in order to make a contribution to the weekend, and in a job that is overly full, this just allows us to squeeze a quart into a pint pot by connecting online periodically rather than always travelling to all the races.
And I'm sure you've been at track previously when Toto hasn't been there. Is there a different feel? Is it a bit of foot off the gas, the boss isn't there, or is it always?
No, because the boss is very much in our ear, whether he's physically there or not there. And in any case, the team is way too professional to take the foot off the gas, just depending on whether or not Toto is physically present. So no, it proceeds much as normal. The things we miss if he's not physically there is if there is some sort of gathering of the bigwigs at the track where they're all physically in each other's faces to discuss something that is to do with the future of the sport, then Toto needs to time his arrivals and weekends so that he's always present for those. But just the prosecution of a weekend, he's able to make those contributions online just as effectively as if he's physically present.
Moving in now, we've had some cooler temperatures, but we go into being in Bahrain. Of course, we've been there for testing. So do we know how that car is going to perform out there?
We can expect that it will be a track that is going to be way harder on tyre degradation than the other tracks we've been at so far. So the asphalt there is very, very coarse and rough. The asphalt is quite old. In fact, it's older than Kimi. That's the track hasn't been resurfaced for a long, long time. And the consequence as asphalt gets older is it gets more jaggedy, and that jaggedy asphalt cuts the tyres up. It also makes the tyres overheat far more easily. So we can expect that this weekend will be a very challenging one from a point of view of managing rear tyre temperatures and front tyre temperatures and managing the degradation rate of the tyres by really trying to look after them around the lap. If we look across the grid, I would say that the McLarens probably have this as an advantage over the rest of the teams, but from the winter testing and the pace we saw relative to the Red Bull and the Ferrari, then we absolutely think we can be in there pitching for a podium, and maybe better if the orange cars slip up. This is one of the weekends where we've chosen to give up one of the free practice sessions that the rules requires us to do to a young driver. And in our case, the young driver is Fred Vesti. Fred Vesti is pretty much our lead simulator driver, and he's been investigating some interesting things to do with the setup of the car and the configuration of some of the controls on the car. And he'll get a chance to follow through on the track the things he's been pursuing in the simulator. So we build that into free practice 1, and then George will have to hop back in the car and get up to speed quickly from FP2. What are we expecting overall? Well, we were there in the winter because that's the winter testing venue. We know it's a tough track for tyre degradation. We know it's a track where you need to be good at the fast section. But also there's some pretty slow and quite extended hairpins where it's very easy to let understeer creep into the car and wash quite a lot of lap time off. So those are the things we'll have our focus upon, just trying to make sure that we can keep the momentum of what's been a decent start to the season, keep that rolling.